The large arena was filled with noise and excitement. Warriors from hundreds of different planets had come to show their strength and skill. The metal floor stretched far in every direction, and giant screens on the wall showed crowds from thousands of worlds watching the event. Jake Sullivan stood among them, wearing his Blue Earth uniform. He was a commander in the human military, and his job was to represent his people at these galactic games. Humans were new to the galaxy. They had only joined the Galactic Council 3 years ago, and many aliens still wondered if Earth people really belonged among the stars. Jake watched the different competitions with interest. In one area, huge warriors called the Krogar lifted stones that weighed more than cars. In another section, insect-like beings called the Vex ran so fast that they looked like blurs. Nearby, the Mindari used their telepathic powers to solve impossible puzzles in seconds. Each species was trying to prove they were the best at something. The Krogar showed their strength. The Vex displayed their speed. The Mindari demonstrated their mental powers. Every race had something special that made them proud, but it was the archery area that caught Jake's attention. A huge crowd had gathered around something at the center. Jake walked closer to see what everyone was looking at. As he pushed through the crowd, he saw a massive bow standing in the middle of the space. The bow was enormous, at least twice as tall as Jake. It was made from dark metal that seemed to swallow light. The weapon looked ancient and powerful, like something from an old legend. Around it, aliens of all kinds whispered and pointed. Standing next to the bow was General Kratok. He was a member of the Thaktar race, warriors known across the galaxy for their fighting skills. Kratok was massive, with red scales that shined like polished metal. He had 4 arms and 3 eyes on each side of his head. When he moved, everyone noticed. The general was talking loudly, and his words were translated into every language through the neural implants most beings wore. His voice boomed across the area as he gestured toward the bow. Another alien warrior stepped forward to try the bow. This one was a Drokan, a species with skin like stone. The Drokan gripped the bow with both hands and pulled as hard as he could. His muscles strained and his rocky skin cracked from the effort. The bowstring moved only a tiny bit before he had to let go, shaking his hands in pain. Kratok laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. He crossed all 4 of his arms over his chest and looked at the crowd with clear pride and superiority. The general spoke again, his voice full of mockery. "This bow has been in my family for 300 generations. It was made by the greatest weapon makers of my world. No warrior from any other species has ever drawn it, not the mighty Krogar, not the swift Vex, and certainly not the weak humans who barely learned to fly in space." Jake felt his jaw tighten when he heard those words. He had spent 3 years working with other species in the Council military. He had fought beside many of them and against some of them. He knew humans were still proving themselves, but he also knew what his people could do when they needed to. Captain Lisa Martinez stood beside Jake. She was his second in command and had been with him through many missions. Her dark eyes watched the alien general with obvious irritation. She leaned close and spoke quietly so only Jake could hear. "Sir, we should walk away. This is just him showing off. It is not worth our time." Jake nodded slightly but did not move. His eyes stayed fixed on the bow and the alien general. Kratok then demonstrated his own skill with the bow. He picked it up easily with 2 of his 4 arms. His other 2 arms gestured dramatically as he pulled the string back to its full length. The massive weapon looked steady as stone in his grip. The string required 800 kilograms of pulling force, but the general made it look effortless. He released the arrow, and it shot forward with a crack like thunder. The arrow moved so fast it was almost invisible. It struck a target 1 kilometer away, punching completely through the reinforced metal and leaving a huge hole. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Beings roared, clicked, whistled, and made 100 other sounds of appreciation. Kratok basked in the attention, his scales growing brighter with pleasure. Then the general's eyes swept across the crowd and locked onto Jake and Martinez. They were the only humans visible in the immediate area. A cruel smile seemed to spread across Kratok's alien features. Humans." The general's voice was full of false politeness. "Perhaps one of you would like to try? I promise the medical facilities here are very good. They have lots of experience treating broken hands and torn muscles." Thousands of eyes turned toward Jake and Martinez. The attention was heavy and uncomfortable. Some aliens looked curious. Others seemed doubtful. A few even looked hopeful, as if they wanted to see the arrogant general taken down a notch. Martinez's hand touched Jake's elbow gently, a quiet warning. But Jake was already moving forward. His boots rang on the metal floor as he walked toward the archery area. The crowd parted before him and conversations died to whispers. Every step felt heavy with meaning. Jake knew that what happened next would affect how other species saw humans. If he failed, it would confirm what many already believed, that Earth people were too weak to matter in the galaxy. But if he just walked away, it would look like he was afraid. Jake stopped a few meters from the massive bow. He looked at it carefully, studying every detail. The dark metal had patterns carved into it that might have been decorative or might have served some purpose. The string looked like it was made from braided carbon fibers, each strand incredibly strong. Kratok walked around him slowly, his movement surprisingly graceful for such a large being. The general towered over Jake by nearly a meter. His bulk made the human look small and fragile by comparison. Having second thoughts? "Little human?" Kratok asked mockingly. "There is no shame in knowing your limits. Your species has some good qualities. You are clever with technology. You do not give up easily. These things are nice. But physical strength? That is not something humans have." Jake did not respond immediately. He continued to study the bow, walking around it slowly. His military training had taught him to assess weapons quickly, and he was using that skill now. The bow was beautiful in its own way. It was clearly ancient, passed down through many generations. The wear marks on the grip showed where countless hands had held it. This was not just a weapon. It was a piece of history, a symbol of Thaktar pride and tradition. Jake stopped his examination and turned to face Kratok directly. He met the alien's 6 eyes with a calm, steady gaze. When he spoke, his voice was respectful but firm. "General, I have been learning about Thaktar culture since we joined the council. Your people have an impressive military tradition. 300 generations is a long time." Kratok's scales rippled with pleasure at the compliment. "Indeed. My ancestors wielded this bow in wars that shaped our entire world. It has brought down flying beasts as large as your spacecraft. It has pierced the armor of the greatest warriors my planet has ever produced." "That is very impressive," Jake said, and he meant it sincerely. The bow was remarkable. "Did your people develop this before you had spaceships?" "Long before. The craft of making bows was ancient when we first looked to the stars." "But why do you ask these questions? Are you trying to delay because you are afraid?" Jake smiled slightly. "Just trying to understand. You see, humans also have a long history with bows. We have been using them for at least 60,000 years, maybe longer. We hunted with them. We fought wars with them. We developed many different styles and methods." The general made a dismissive gesture with one hand. "And yet you abandoned them as soon as you found better weapons." "We Thaktar keep these traditions because they represent the peak of what a warrior can achieve with pure strength and skill." "That is one way to look at it," Jake agreed. He finished his walk around the bow and faced Kratok again. "May I try?" The general's scales darkened slightly. "You understand what you are asking? This bow requires 800 kilograms of force to draw. Even with your basic understanding of physics and mechanics, you cannot hope to match that. You will embarrass yourself and your entire species, maybe," Jake said calmly. "But I would still like to try." Kratok gestured toward the bow with a movement that seemed like a shrug. "Very well. It is your humiliation to experience. Please show everyone how weak humans are." The crowd pressed closer, forming a tight ring around the archery area. Jake could feel their attention like physical weight. The moment felt enormous, like everything depended on what happened next. Jake stepped up to the bow and placed his left hand on the grip. The metal felt cool against his palm. He could feel the weight of history in the weapon, generations of warriors who had held this same spot. The crowd watched in complete silence now. Even the holographic displays had zoomed in, broadcasting the scene to viewers across the entire arena and beyond. Millions of beings across the galaxy were watching to see what would happen. Jake looked over his shoulder at Martinez. She had followed him to the edge of the archery area and stood watching with concern on her face. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, an understanding built from years of working together. "Captain, could you come here for a moment?" Jake asked quietly. Martinez walked forward immediately, though confusion showed clearly on her face. Jake turned slightly, keeping his left hand on the bow. He looked at her and his expression was calm and certain. "Hold my shoulder," Jake said. Martinez blinked in surprise. For just a moment she looked confused. Then understanding appeared in her eyes, followed quickly by a mixture of shock and amazement. "Sir, are you sure about this?" "Very sure," Jake replied. "Please." She stepped closer and placed both hands firmly on his left shoulder. She braced herself, setting her feet wide for stability. The crowd murmured in confusion. No one understood what they were seeing. Even Kratok looked puzzled, his scales shifting through uncertain colors. "What is the human doing?" someone in the crowd asked. The question was translated and repeated in dozens of languages as beings tried to understand. Jake took a deep breath. He could feel Martinez's steadying presence behind him, her hands solid on his shoulder. His left hand gripped the bow firmly. With his right hand he reached for the string. Then he did something that surprised everyone. Instead of trying to pull the string backward like Kratok had done, Jake began to push forward with his left hand while pulling back with his right hand at the same time. It was basic physics, the kind of mechanical advantage humans had been using for thousands of years. When you pushed and pulled at the same time, you did not have to fight against the full force of the bow. The load was distributed across the entire body. Martinez acted as an anchor point, giving Jake the stability he needed. The same principle allowed humans to use levers to move massive stones. The same idea let them use pulleys to lift impossible weights. It was how compound bows could match the power of much larger weapons. Humans had learned long ago that you did not always need brute strength if you understood how forces worked. The bow creaked. The sound was loud in the sudden silence. The string began to move backward, slowly at first. Jake's face showed strain. This was not easy. Sweat appeared on his forehead. His muscles trembled with effort, but the string kept moving. Martinez leaned her full weight into his shoulder, becoming part of the system. Together they formed a single machine working in perfect coordination. The crowd's murmur grew louder. Shock rippled through the assembled aliens. Many had never seen this technique before. They had always relied on their natural strengths, never thinking there might be other ways to accomplish the same goal. Kratok took a step forward, his scales shifting rapidly through different colors. The changes indicated genuine surprise and something that might have been concern. His voice came out uncertain. "Impossible. The bow requires 800 kilograms of force. No human has such strength." Jake grunted with effort but managed to speak. His words came out steady despite the strain on his body. "You are right. I probably cannot pull 800 kilograms, but I can push 400 with my left hand while pulling 400 with my right. And Captain Martinez weighs 65 kilograms, which gives me excellent leverage." The string continued moving back. Inch by inch it drew closer to full extension. Jake's right arm stretched out completely. His muscles stood out clearly under his uniform, every fiber of his being focused on maintaining control. An arrow had appeared in the bow, placed there by one of the arena attendants. It sat knocked and ready, pointing toward the distant target, the same target that Kratok had struck earlier, a kilometer away. The bow thrummed with stored energy. The string vibrated slightly, holding tremendous potential force. Jake had reached the full draw. His arm was completely extended. The weapon was ready to fire. Jake held the position for a moment. He wanted everyone to see that he had not just managed to pull the string back. He could control it. He had mastered this supposedly impossible weapon. Then he adjusted his aim. His eyes sighted down the length of the arrow toward the distant target. He calculated the trajectory, accounting for the distance and the weapon's power. Everything else faded away. There was only the bow, the arrow, and the target. The arena had gone completely silent. Thousands of beings held their breath. Even the holographic displays seemed frozen. The universe itself appeared to be waiting to see what would happen next. Jake released the string. The crack of the bowstring was like thunder breaking through the silence. The arrow became a blur of motion, moving far too fast for most eyes to follow. It crossed the kilometer distance in what seemed like no time at all. The arrow struck the target dead center, exactly where Kratok's arrow had hit. It punched through the reinforced metal with tremendous force, but it did not stop there. The arrow continued through the target and embedded itself deep into the wall behind it. Spiderweb cracks spread through the supposedly indestructible material. For a long moment, nobody moved. The silence stretched on, heavy with shock and disbelief. Then someone in the crowd made a sound. Another joined in. Within seconds, the entire arena erupted. The noise was deafening. Roars and cheers and whistles and clicks filled the air. 100 different species made 100 different sounds of amazement. The holographic crowds went wild, and the displays showed the shot from dozens of angles, replaying it over and over. Jake carefully released his grip on the bow. He stepped back and rolled his shoulders, working out the tension from the tremendous effort. Martinez removed her hands from his shoulder. She was trying very hard not to grin, but her eyes sparkled with pride and relief. They both turned to face Kratok. The Thaktar general stood completely still. His scales had gone pale, almost white. All 6 of his eyes stared at the distant target where Jake's arrow stuck out from the wall. His forearms hung at his sides, forgotten. The general's mouth opened and closed several times before any sound came out. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible over the crowd noise. "You cheated. You used assistance. You changed the method." Jake shook his head calmly. "You said no human could pull your bow. You said it required strength we did not possess. You were technically correct. I did not pull it the way you pull it. I used a different technique, one that humans developed tens of thousands of years ago." He paused, then continued more gently. "Your bow is magnificent, General. It represents centuries of tradition and skill. But the challenge was never about matching your strength. It was about whether a human could draw the bow and hit the target. And I have done both." Kratok seemed to struggle with this. His scales continued to shift through pale colors as he tried to process what had happened. Around them, the crowd continued to celebrate, but many were also talking excitedly, discussing what they had witnessed. An elderly being floated forward. It was a Mindari, one of the telepathic species whose wisdom was respected across the council. Its body looked like living crystal, and it chimed softly as it moved. When it spoke, its words appeared directly in everyone's minds. "The human has revealed something important, something some of us have suspected since Earth joined the council. Humans are not the strongest race. They are not the fastest or the longest lived or the smartest in pure thinking power. But they have something that makes them impressive in ways we are still learning to understand." Kratok turned to face the Mindari. His voice had lost some of its earlier certainty. "What do you mean, Elder?" The Mindari's crystalline form seemed to shimmer. "Adaptability. When humans face a problem they cannot solve with their natural abilities, they find another way. They invent tools. They develop techniques. They work together. They change the problem until it becomes something they can handle." Jake felt uncomfortable with all the attention shifting back to him. He had not done this to make humans look superior. He had simply wanted to prove that his people could contribute something valuable. Martinez stepped forward, her voice calm and professional. "With respect, Elder, Commander Sullivan did not invent this technique. Humans have been using push-pull methods in archery for thousands of years. Many of our ancient cultures developed similar approaches. What he showed today was not something new. It was simply using old knowledge in a new situation." "Exactly," the Mindari chimed. "That is the point. Your species collects knowledge. You preserve techniques. You apply them when needed. Many races develop fixed traditions around their strengths, but humans seem to take pride in finding whatever method works regardless of tradition." Other beings in the crowd began to nod or make their species equivalent gestures of agreement. The moment was transforming from a simple demonstration into something larger, a recognition that humanity brought something unique to the galactic community. A large engineer from the Krogar species stepped forward. His people looked like walking mountains of muscle and stone. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like an earthquake. "I have studied human engineering. Their spacecraft are not as powerful as ours. They are not as elegant as Vex ships. They are not as durable as Drokan vessels. Yet humans combine elements from all our designs. They create something unique that can outperform any single approach in certain situations." Kratok listened to all these comments. His scales slowly cycled through colors that showed deep thought. Finally, he turned back to Jake. When he spoke, his voice had changed. The mocking edge was gone. "Commander Sullivan, I owe you an apology. I believed that strength was the only measure of a warrior. That tradition and power were the foundations of being a good soldier. You have shown me there are other paths to success." Jake bowed his head respectfully. "General, your bow is still a magnificent weapon. Your skill with it is undeniable. I did not mean to diminish your traditions. I simply wanted to show that humans can find ways to help, even when challenges seem beyond our natural abilities." Kratok nodded slowly. "Perhaps that is exactly what the Council needs. We have grown comfortable with our strengths but also trapped by them. The Thaktar solve problems with force, the Mindari with thought, the Vex with speed, but humans seem willing to use whatever approach is needed. The Mindari elder chimed in agreement. The galaxy is changing. New threats appear that do not respect our traditional advantages. Perhaps humanity's greatest gift to the Council will not be any single strength. It will be reminding us that we do not need to be limited by the methods that worked in the past. A younger Thaktar warrior stepped forward from behind Kratok. He was one of the general's subordinates. His scales showed yellow-green colors that meant curiosity in their culture. Commander Sullivan, could you teach this technique? This push-pull method you used? Jake looked surprised by the question. Then he smiled, of course. Though I should warn you, it takes practice. Humans have been working on these methods for thousands of years. But the basic idea is simple enough. It is about spreading force efficiently rather than using maximum power. Kratok watched his subordinate with an expression that was hard to read on his alien face. Then slowly his scales shifted to a warm amber color. In Thaktar culture, this showed approval. Yes, learn this technique. Tomorrow you will show me what you have learned. Perhaps it is time the Thaktar remembered that even the strongest warriors can benefit from new knowledge. The arena began to empty as various species returned to their own competitions. But something had changed. Conversations started between races that rarely spoke to each other. They compared techniques and discussed methods. The humans noticed other species looking at them differently now, not as weak newcomers but as beings who might have valuable ideas to share. Martinez and Jake walked back toward the human section of the arena. She finally allowed herself to grin fully. Sir, that was either brilliant or insane. I am still not sure which. Both probably, Jake admitted. But someone needed to remind everyone, including us, that humans do not win by being the strongest or fastest. We win by refusing to accept that there is only one way to solve a problem. Do you think it will make a difference? One demonstration with a bow? Jake glanced back at the archery range. The young Thaktar warrior was already examining the bow with fresh eyes. He was trying to understand the physics of what Jake had done, maybe not by itself, but it is a start. Sometimes the most important battles are not won with weapons. They are won with ideas. Over the next few days, word of what happened spread throughout the galactic community. The video of Jake drawing the Thaktar bow was viewed billions of times. News outlets from hundreds of worlds discussed it. Military analysts studied the technique. Scientists examined the physics. But more importantly, it started conversations. Species that had dismissed human contributions began to reconsider. Military leaders who had thought humans too weak for joint operations started asking questions about human tactics and training methods. Jake found himself suddenly famous across the galaxy. He received hundreds of messages from beings of all kinds. Some wanted to learn the technique. Others wanted to share their own methods. A few even apologized for dismissing humans too quickly. One message came from an unexpected source. It was from Kratok himself. The Thaktar general invited Jake to visit the Thaktar homeworld to speak at their military academy. He wanted human perspectives included in their warrior training. Martinez read the invitation over Jake's shoulder. They were in their quarters on the human section of the arena station. She whistled softly. That is quite an honor, sir. The Thaktar Military Academy is one of the most respected institutions in the galaxy. They have never invited an outsider to teach there. Jake nodded thoughtfully. It is more than an honor. It is an opportunity. If we can show other species that human methods have value, it will help our people gain real acceptance in the Council. So you will accept? Of course, but I will need help. This is bigger than just teaching archery. We need to put together a program that shows the full range of human tactical thinking. Martinez grinned. I will start putting together a team. We should include people from different military backgrounds. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. Each branch has developed unique approaches. Good idea. And we should include civilians too. Engineers, scientists, teachers. The point is not just military tactics. It is about how humans think and solve problems in general. As they began planning, Jake thought about what had happened. A simple demonstration with a bow had opened doors that might have taken years to open otherwise. It reminded him why humans had succeeded despite their physical limitations. Humans were good at seeing opportunities. They were good at making connections between different ideas. They were good at taking what they had and finding ways to make it work. These were not flashy abilities like super strength or telepathy, but they were valuable in their own way. That evening, Jake stood at a viewing port looking out at the stars. The arena station orbited a beautiful blue planet, and he could see ships coming and going from hundreds of worlds. Each ship represented a different species, a different culture, a different way of seeing the universe. For years, humans had worried about fitting in among these vastly different beings. They had felt small and weak compared to species with natural advantages, but maybe that was the wrong way to think about it. Maybe humans did not need to be the strongest or fastest or smartest. Maybe their role was to be the bridge, the species that could understand and work with everyone else. The ones who could look at a problem from multiple angles and find creative solutions. A message alert chimed softly. Jake checked it and smiled. It was from Ambassador Helen Carter, Earth's primary representative to the Council. She wanted to meet with him about what had happened. The ambassador's message was brief but enthusiastic. Your demonstration has created quite a stir, Commander. The Council leadership wants to discuss establishing formal programs for knowledge exchange between species. They are using your bow technique as an example of what is possible. Jake sat down at his desk and began composing a reply. As he wrote, he realized that something fundamental had shifted. Humans were no longer just asking for a place at the table. They were being invited to contribute in meaningful ways. Martinez came in carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Jake and sat down across from him. I have been thinking about something. What is that? When you asked me to hold your shoulder, you took a risk. If it had not worked, we both would have looked foolish. But you trusted that I would understand what you needed and that we could work together to make it happen. Jake nodded. That is what humans do best. We work together. We trust each other. We know that we cannot do everything alone. Exactly. And that might be the most important lesson we can teach the rest of the galaxy. Not tactics or techniques, but the value of cooperation and trust. Jake smiled and raised his coffee cup. To cooperation and trust, then, Martinez clinked her cup against his, and to proving that humans belong among the stars. As they drank their coffee and continued planning, neither of them knew just how much their simple demonstration would change things. But they both felt hopeful about the future, and that was enough for now. 3 weeks after the incident at the Grand Combat Trials, Jake received a formal summons. He was to appear before the Galactic Council on the capital world of Zentara Prime. The message did not explain why, but Jake had a good idea what it was about. The trip to Zentara Prime took 2 days by the fastest human ship available. Jake spent most of that time preparing, reviewing what he might say if asked to speak. Martinez accompanied him, as did Ambassador Helen Carter. Ambassador Carter was a woman in her 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes. She had been representing Earth at the Council for 2 years and knew the political landscape well. As their ship approached Zentara Prime, she briefed Jake on what to expect. The Council building is massive, she explained. Representatives from 200 species meet there. Each has their own section optimized for their environmental needs. The technology is impressive. Gravity fields, atmospheric controls, translation systems, everything works seamlessly. What do you think they want? Jake asked. Carter smiled. Your bow demonstration has become the most talked about event in Council history. It has been analyzed by every military, every scientific institution, every political body. They want to discuss what it means for human involvement in Council affairs. Is that good or bad? Good, I think. But we need to be careful. You have made some powerful friends, but also raised questions. Not everyone is comfortable with humans proving themselves so dramatically. The Council building was even more impressive than Carter had described. It dominated the planet's surface, a structure that could be seen from orbit. As their shuttle landed, Jake could see beings of every imaginable type coming and going. Inside, the corridors were designed to accommodate the vast diversity of Council members. Jake walked through sections where gravity shifted subtly. The air changed gradually as they moved between zones. Everything was engineered to work for everyone. The Council chamber was a vast sphere. Representatives sat in sections arranged around the central space. Each zone had its own environmental controls. The aquatic species had water-filled chambers. The high-gravity species had reinforced platforms. The energy beings had containment fields. The human section was relatively small, reflecting their junior status. Jake took his seat next to Ambassador Carter. Martinez sat on his other side. Below them, the chamber floor showed a holographic display of the meeting agenda. "Do you know why you are here?" Carter whispered as they waited for the session to begin. "I assume it has something to do with the bow," Jake replied quietly. Carter smiled. "It has become more than just an incident with a bow. It has been broadcast across the entire council network. Military experts have analyzed it. Academics have discussed it. You have become famous, Commander." Before Jake could respond, the session began. The High Arbiter was a massive being whose species name Jake could not pronounce. When it spoke, the sound was like distant thunder, translated instantly by the neural implants everyone wore. "We gather today to discuss a matter that has captured our community's attention. The demonstration by Commander Jake Sullivan of Earth has prompted important discussions about tactical approaches, training methods, and the nature of strength itself." Kratok rose from the Thaktar section. His scales had returned to their normal crimson color. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly across the chamber. "Honored Council, I wish to formally withdraw my objection to human participation in joint military operations. I argued that humans lacked the physical abilities to contribute meaningfully to our forces." I was wrong. Surprised murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Thaktar had been among the loudest opponents of human military involvement. This change was significant. Commander Sullivan showed something the Thaktar had forgotten in our pride. Victory does not always go to the strongest. It goes to the most adaptable, the most creative, the most willing to find solutions others overlook. A Vex representative stood next. Her mandibles clicked rapidly as she spoke. "The Vex Collective has analyzed the human technique extensively. We discovered that many of our traditional methods could be improved by applying similar principles. We propose a knowledge exchange program where humans and other species can share tactical innovations." The Mindari Elder floated forward, its crystalline body catching the chamber's light. "I propose something more significant. The human demonstration revealed that we have all become comfortable. We rely on our species-specific strengths without considering alternatives. I move that we establish a new branch of the Council Military Academy dedicated to cross-species tactical development." The proposal sparked immediate debate. Some species supported it with enthusiasm. They saw opportunities to improve their own abilities. Others worried about sharing their secrets or changing their traditions. The discussion continued for hours. Jake sat quietly, listening and learning. He was amazed that his simple demonstration had created such a strong response. He had only wanted to prove humans could contribute. He had not expected to spark a debate about how the entire council approached military training. Finally, the High Arbiter called for order. "Commander Sullivan, you have remained silent during this debate. Do you have any thoughts to share?" Jake stood, feeling thousands of alien eyes on him. He took a breath and began speaking carefully. "Honored Council, I am humbled that my actions have prompted such discussion. But I want to be clear about something. What I showed was not human superiority. It was a reminder that every species, every culture has developed unique solutions to problems." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "Humans spent most of our history as the weak species on our planet. We were not as strong as the predators that hunted us. We were not as fast as the prey we needed to catch. We had no armor, no claws, no venom. So we adapted, we innovated, we worked together, and eventually we survived. But every species here has a similar story. The Thaktar learned to use their forearms with amazing efficiency. The Vex developed speed and precision no human can match. The Mindari went beyond physical limits entirely. Each of you has unique strengths that humanity cannot copy." Jake looked around the chamber, meeting as many gazes as he could. "The question is not whether humans have something to teach you. The question is whether we are all willing to learn from each other, to set aside our pride long enough to consider that there might be better ways, or at least different ways that work in different situations." The Krogar engineer stood, his massive form making the platform creak. "The human speaks truth. My people have built fortresses that stood for 10,000 years. We are proud of our work. But human architects showed us techniques for flexible structures that can survive earthquakes we thought impossible to defend against. Not because their methods are better, but because they are different." More voices joined in. Representatives from dozens of species shared examples of learning from others. The conversation shifted from defensive arguments to genuine interest in working together. By the session's end, The Council had approved the creation of the Cross-Species Tactical Development Program. Facilities would be established at multiple locations across Council space. Jake was asked to serve as one of the human instructors, along with specialists from dozens of other species. As beings began filing out of the chamber, Krytok approached Jake. The massive Thaktar general extended one of his 4 hands in the human greeting he had obviously practiced. "Commander Sullivan, I wanted to speak with you personally. That day at the arena you could have humiliated me. You could have used your victory to diminish Thaktar pride. Instead, you showed respect for our traditions while demonstrating an alternative approach." Jake shook the offered hand. "General, there was never any intent to diminish your people. The bow is truly magnificent. I only wanted to prove that humans could contribute something valuable. You have proven far more than that. You reminded us all that the galaxy is vast, and the challenges we face require more than any single species can provide. The Thaktar would be honored to train alongside humans in this new program. The honor would be ours," Jake said sincerely. That evening, Jake stood with Carter and Martinez at a viewing port in their quarters. They looked out at the city below, lights from hundreds of different cultures mixing together. "You did well today," Carter said. "You could have taken credit for everything, made it about human superiority. Instead, you made it about cooperation." "That was wise. It is the truth," Jake replied. "We are not better than anyone else. We are just different. And maybe that difference is what the galaxy needs right now." Martinez smiled. "So what happens now? Now we work. We build this program. We show other species that humans can be good partners. We learn from them as much as they learn from us. And maybe eventually, we all become stronger together." 6 months after the council meeting, the first cross-species tactical development facility opened on Zentara Prime. The building was impressive, designed to accommodate dozens of different species at once. Each training area could adjust its environment to suit whoever was using it. Jake stood in the main observation room, watching the first class in session. Below him, beings from 20 different worlds practiced together. A Thaktar warrior worked with a human instructor on leverage techniques. A group of Vex students learned human camouflage methods. Krogar engineers studied lightweight human materials. The program had grown beyond anything Jake had imagined. What started as simple archery lessons had become a comprehensive exchange of knowledge across the galaxy. Every species brought something unique to share, and everyone seemed eager to learn. Martinez joined him at the window. She carried a data pad showing the week's schedule. "Sir, we have 50 new applications for the next training cycle. Every major species in the council wants to send people. That is good, but we need to be careful not to grow too fast. Quality matters more than quantity." "Agreed. I've been working with the other instructors to develop better screening processes. We want students who are genuinely interested in learning, not just checking a box." Jake watched a young Thaktar successfully demonstrate the push-pull bow technique to a mixed group of students. The warrior's instructor, a human woman named Kate Morrison, applauded and then showed him how to refine his form even further. "It still amazes me sometimes," Jake said. 6 months ago, most of these species barely acknowledged that humans existed. Now they are learning our methods and teaching us theirs. You gave them a reason to notice us. And more importantly, you did it in a way that did not threaten anyone. You showed respect for their traditions while offering something new." A message alert chimed. Jake checked it and smiled. It was from Krytok. The Thaktar general had become one of the program's strongest supporters. His message was brief but warm. "Commander Sullivan, the first graduates from our joint program have returned to Thaktar. They are already implementing what they learned. Our military leaders are impressed. We would like to expand our participation in the next cycle." Jake showed the message to Martinez. She grinned. "High praise from the Thaktar. They do not give compliments easily." The afternoon brought a special demonstration. A mixed team of humans, Thaktar, Vex, and Krogar had been training together for 3 months. Today they would show what they had learned by tackling a complex tactical problem. The scenario involved rescuing hostages from a fortified position. In the old way, each species would have approached it using their traditional strengths. The Thaktar would have used overwhelming force. The Vex would have tried speed and infiltration. The Krogar would have built siege equipment, but this team had learned to combine approaches. They used Vex speed for reconnaissance. Krogar engineering for creating entry points, Thaktar strength for breaching defenses, and human tactics for coordinating it all. The result was elegant and effective. The watching instructors were impressed. Several took notes, already thinking about how to incorporate these lessons into future training. The students had not just learned individual techniques, they had learned to think beyond their species' traditional methods. After the demonstration, Jake spoke with the team leader, a Thaktar named Vorsak. The young warrior's scale showed the bright colors of excitement and pride. "Commander, this program has changed how I think about everything. I always believed strength was the answer to every problem. Now I understand that sometimes the answer is speed, or cleverness, or patience. Different situations require different approaches. That is exactly what we hoped you would learn," Jake replied. "Strength is valuable, but it is just one tool. A good warrior knows when to use each tool available." "May I ask you something personal, Commander?" "Of course." "When you drew General Kratok's bow, were you afraid it would not work?" Jake smiled. "Terrified. I knew the theory was sound, but that bow was more powerful than anything I had practiced with. There was a real chance I would fail in front of thousands of beings. But you tried anyway. Why? Because sometimes you have to take risks to prove a point. Humans are not the strongest or fastest species, but we are willing to try things that might not work. We learn from failure and try again. That willingness to risk failure is part of what makes us successful." Vorsak's scales rippled thoughtfully. "The Thaktar are taught that failure is shameful. We must always succeed through strength and skill. But perhaps we have been too afraid of failure. Perhaps that fear has limited us. Every species has strengths and weaknesses," Jake said. "The key is understanding both and working with others to fill in the gaps." That evening, Jake attended a dinner with representatives from various species involved in the program. The meal was held in a large hall with multiple environmental zones, so everyone could eat in comfort. Ambassador Carter was there, along with military leaders from a dozen worlds. The conversation flowed easily, with beings who had been strangers 6 months ago now talking like old colleagues. Kratok stood to make a toast. His forearms held different ceremonial items from Thaktar culture. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly through the hall's translation systems. "6 months ago, I stood in an arena and mocked the humans. I believed my people's strength made us superior. Commander Sullivan proved me wrong, not by defeating me, but by showing me a different path. Today I stand before you humbled and grateful. This program has made us all stronger, not as individual species, but as a community." The gathered beings made their various sounds of approval. Glasses and cups were raised in a gesture that had spread across many cultures. Jake stood as well. He felt the weight of the moment. 6 months ago, humans had been barely tolerated members of the council. Now they were helping to reshape how the entire galaxy approached military training and cooperation. General Kratok is too generous with his praise. But he is right about one thing. We are all stronger together. Humans did not bring superior methods to the council. We brought different perspectives, and every species here has done the same. The real strength of this program is not what any one species contributes. It is what we create when we combine all our knowledge. Later, Jake walked through the facility alone. Most of the students had retired for the night, but he could see a few still practicing in various training rooms. A Vex and a human worked together on speed drills. 2 Krogar studied human engineering diagrams. A mixed group discussed tactical theory in one of the common areas. He stopped at a small memorial that had been installed in the main corridor. At its center was a replica of Kratok's ancient bow, mounted on a stand. A plaque beneath it read in all the council languages, "No warrior can pull this bow alone, but together we can accomplish anything." Jake smiled at the words. They captured perfectly what the program had become. Not a place where one species proved itself superior, but a place where everyone learned to work together and appreciate each other's strengths. Martinez found him there, looking at the memorial. She stood beside him quietly for a moment before speaking. "Thinking about that day? Always, it changed everything. You took a huge risk. If it had gone wrong, we might never have recovered from the embarrassment." Jake nodded. "But it was the right risk to take. Sometimes you have to be willing to fail if you want to succeed. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had failed?" "Sometimes. But I try not to dwell on it. We succeeded, and that success opened doors. Now we have to work to keep those doors open and show that humans truly deserve their place here." I think we are doing that. Look at this place. Look at what we have built in just 6 months. This is bigger than proving humans are strong enough. This is about changing how the entire galaxy works together. Jake looked around at the facility, at the students from dozens of worlds learning together. Martinez was right. This was bigger than he had imagined. What started as one man with a bow had become a movement toward greater cooperation across the galaxy. Come on, Martinez said. We have an early session tomorrow. Vorsak wants to demonstrate the combined tactics his team developed. As they walked toward their quarters, Jake felt satisfied with how things had turned out. Humans had found their place among the stars, not by being the strongest or the smartest, but by being willing to learn and share and work with others. That was a legacy worth building. 1 year after the bow incident, Jake stood on a balcony overlooking the expanded training facility. 3 new buildings had been added to accommodate the growing program. Students from over 100 species now trained here, learning from each other and developing new approaches to old problems. The program's success had exceeded everyone's expectations. What started as a military training initiative had spread into other areas. Scientists were sharing research methods. Engineers were collaborating on new technologies. Diplomats were using the techniques developed here to improve communication between species. A major threat had emerged 3 months earlier. A hostile force from outside Council space had begun attacking border worlds. The attacks were coordinated and sophisticated, unlike anything the Council had faced before. Individual species had struggled to defend against these raids, but a mixed force of graduates from the tactical program had changed everything. They used Vex speed for early warning, Krogar engineering for defensive positions, Thaktar strength for counterattacks, human tactics for coordination, and dozens of other techniques from other species. The result was a defense that adapted to every situation. The hostile force had retreated after 3 decisive defeats. For the first time in Council history, a truly unified military response had been achieved, not because everyone used the same methods, but because everyone learned to work together effectively. Martinez joined Jake on the balcony, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed him one and leaned against the railing beside him. Big day tomorrow. The Council is voting on making the program permanent and expanding it to 5 more locations. Do you think it will pass? Jake asked. After what happened with the border defense? Absolutely. We proved that this approach works, not just in theory but in actual combat situations. Jake sipped his coffee thoughtfully. Sometimes I still cannot believe how much has changed. A year ago I was just trying to prove humans could pull a bow. Now we are reshaping galactic military doctrine. You did more than pull a bow. You showed everyone a different way of thinking. That was always more important than the physical demonstration. A group of students emerged from one of the training buildings below. They were laughing together. A mixed group of humans, Thaktar, Vex, and several other species. A year ago, most of these beings would never have spoken to each other. Now they were friends and colleagues. That is what I am most proud of, Jake said, pointing at the group. Not the military victories or the expanded facilities. That, people from different worlds working together and genuinely enjoying it. A message notification appeared on Jake's datapad. He checked it and smiled. It was from his family on Earth. His daughter had sent a video message. The video showed a school classroom on Earth. Children of various ages sat at desks, and at the front of the room stood Jake's daughter, Jenny, who was a teacher. She was showing the students a presentation about the cross-species tactical program. And this is my father, Jenny said in the video, showing a picture of Jake with the famous bow. He showed the galaxy that humans do not need to be the strongest or the fastest. We just need to be smart and willing to work with others. The children in the video cheered and clapped. Jake felt his eyes water slightly. This was the real impact of what had happened. Not just changing military strategy, but inspiring a new generation to think differently about their place in the galaxy. Martinez looked over his shoulder at the video and smiled. Your family must be very proud, I hope so. I have been away from Earth for most of the past year. Sometimes I wonder if it was worth the sacrifice. Look at what you have built. Look at the lives you have changed. Of course it was worth it. Your family understands that. That evening, a formal ceremony was held to honor the graduates of the first full-year program. Representatives from dozens of worlds attended. The large hall was filled with beings of every imaginable type, all gathered to celebrate what had been accomplished. Kratok gave the opening address. The Thaktar general had become one of the program's most passionate advocates. His scales gleamed under the hall's lights as he spoke. 1 year ago, I believed the Thaktar way was the only way. I believed strength and tradition were all that mattered. Commander Sullivan taught me otherwise, not through words, but through actions. He showed me that the greatest strength comes not from individual power, but from unity and cooperation. The general paused and looked directly at Jake. Today, graduates from 20 species stand before us. They have learned from each other. They have grown together. They have become something greater than any of them could have been alone. This is the future of the Galactic Council. The ceremony continued with speeches from various leaders and demonstrations by the graduating students. Each presentation showed how different species techniques had been combined to create something new and effective. Finally, Jake was called to speak. He walked to the podium feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes upon him. When he spoke, his voice was steady and clear. 1 year ago, I stood in an arena and drew a bow. It was a simple act, but it meant something important. It showed that humans could contribute to the council in meaningful ways. But more than that, it showed all of us that we do not have to be limited by tradition or by our species' natural abilities. He looked at the assembled graduates. The beings before him represented a new way of thinking, a new approach to cooperation that the galaxy had never seen before. What you have learned here is not just about military tactics. It is about understanding that every perspective has value, every approach has merit, every species brings something unique to our community. The strongest force in the galaxy is not any single species. It is all of us working together. The hall erupted in applause and cheers. Beings made sounds of approval in 100 different ways. The graduates stood proudly, knowing they were part of something historic. After the ceremony, Jake walked through the facility one last time. He was scheduled to return to Earth the next day for a brief visit before the expansion began. He wanted to remember this place as it was now, before it grew even larger. He stopped at the memorial with the replica bow. New plaques had been added around it, honoring graduates who had distinguished themselves in various ways. The central message remained the same, though. No warrior can pull this bow alone, but together we can accomplish anything. Vorsak, the young Thaktar who had been one of the first students, approached. He had graduated at the top of his class and was now an instructor himself. Commander, I wanted to thank you personally before you leave. This program changed my life. I thought I knew everything about being a warrior. You showed me I knew almost nothing. Jake smiled. You learned quickly. You are one of our best instructors now, because I learned to see beyond Thaktar tradition. I learned to value other approaches, and I learned that asking for help is not weakness. It is wisdom. That night, Jake stood once more at the viewing port in his quarters. Tomorrow he would see his family. He would walk on Earth's soil again. He would have time to rest and reflect on everything that had happened, but he knew he would return. The program needed him. More importantly, he believed in what they were building, a galaxy where differences were celebrated rather than feared, where cooperation was valued over competition, where every species could contribute and be appreciated for their unique strengths. Martinez knocked and entered, carrying a datapad. Sir, the final vote just came in. The expansion was approved unanimously. 5 new facilities will open within the year. The Council has also established a new position, Director of Cross-Species Cooperation. They want to offer it to you. Jake turned from the window, surprised. That is a significant honor, but it would mean staying away from Earth even longer. True, but it would also mean shaping the future of galactic cooperation. This program has proven itself. Now it needs someone to guide it as it grows, someone who understands its core principles. What do you think I should do? Martinez smiled. I think you already know. You have never been someone who walks away from responsibility, and this is bigger than any of us. This is about the kind of galaxy we want to live in. Jake nodded slowly. You are right. I will accept the position, but I want you as my deputy. We started this together. We should continue together. I was hoping you would say that, sir. I already accepted my own offer. They want me to oversee the training programs at the new facilities. They both laughed. After a year of working together so closely, they often thought alike. It was one of the strengths of their partnership. As Jake prepared for bed, he thought about the journey that had brought him here. One simple act in an arena had changed everything. It had opened doors he never imagined existed. It had given humanity a voice in galactic affairs. Most importantly, it had shown everyone that cooperation was stronger than competition. The next morning, as Jake's ship prepared to depart for Earth, he took one last look at the facility. Students from dozens of worlds were already up and training. Instructors from different species worked together seamlessly. The program was thriving. He would return in 2 weeks, ready to take on his new role, ready to guide the expansion of something he believed would change the galaxy forever, not through force or dominance, but through understanding and cooperation. As the ship lifted off, Jake smiled. 1 year ago, he had been just another